Welcome back to Morning Joe. Beautiful picture of the White House at 7:38 in the morning. 2020 presidential candidate Bernie Sanders was hospitalized Tuesday for a blocked artery after he felt chest discomfort during a campaign event. Sanders, who was 78 years old, underwent a major medical procedure to insert 2 stents. His campaign released a statement, writing, quote, "Senator Sanders is conversing and in good spirits. He'll be resting up over the next few days. We are canceling his events and appearances until further notice, and we will continue to provide appropriate updates." Senator Sanders took to Twitter to let followers know he's doing well, and of course to plug his health care plan, tweeting, "Thanks for all the well wishes. I'm feeling good. I'm fortunate to have good health care and great doctors and nurses helping me recover. None of us know when a medical emergency might affect us, and no one should fear going bankrupt if it occurs. Medicare for all." We certainly are sending our very best to Senator Sanders for a speedy recovery. Look forward to getting him back out on the trail. As for the race for the nomination, a new Monmouth University national poll has Massachusetts Senator Elizabeth Warren at the top of the 2020 field with 28% of Democratic voters, up 8 points since August. Joe Biden follows in second place at 25%, up 6 points. Both remain within the almost 5-point margin of error. They are effectively tied. Warren and Biden are in a dead heat in New Hampshire. According to the latest St. Anselm College poll, only 1 point separates the two as they poll within the 5-point margin of error, 25-24. But 57% of New Hampshire's likely Democratic primary voters say their choice could change between now and Election Day. We see that in a lot of polls. 43% say their pick is locked in. Joining us now, politics and journalism professor at Morgan State University, politics editor at The Root, and an MSNBC political contributor, Jason Johnson, former chief of staff to the DCCC and a former director of strategic communication for Hillary Clinton's presidential campaign, Adrienne Elrod. She's an MSNBC contributor. Also, Marina Rubina is with us. She is the national director of Indivisible, a nationwide movement of thousands of volunteer-led local groups that engage in progressive advocacy, and the host of MSNBC's Politics Nation, president of the National Action Network, Reverend Al Sharpton. It is Reverend Al Sharpton Day. Happy birthday, my friend.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday, Rev.
I asked you how old you were, and you said simply, you're just in Mike Barnacle's generation.
No, I'm happy to say I'm 65 today. I say it happily because there was times in my career I didn't think I'd make 45. But I thank God I made it to 65, and I'm enjoying it tonight. Spike Lee and Samuel Jackson and others are having a big party for me. But I woke up this morning, Reverend Jesse Jackson, who mentored me, did a big tweet, and I'm happy about that. And former President Obama sent a video in for the party.
You know what, Rev?
So
this
it's a great birthday for me. Starting our morning.
Sounds exactly like my birthday.
Yeah.
Obama
I was trying to catch up.
I was trying to catch up. Spike Lee throwing me a party.
Stones at his party.
Oh, yeah. Well, happy birthday to you.
Thank you.
We're glad you're here on your birthday. Let's give you the first word then about what's going on, the dynamics of this poll. This follows with what we've seen, a surge from Elizabeth Warren tied at the top with Joe Biden nationally.
Well, first of all, we all have Senator Sanders in our prayers.
Yeah.
And I think it showed a real measure of leadership when he used it as an opportunity to also push his policy, Medicare for all. But I think it's undeniable Elizabeth Warren has a momentum. It's showing real traction. And I observed over the months the growth in her candidacy because she's remained cool and calm, yet passionate at the same time. And I think that it is going to be very interesting to see how long she maintains this momentum. If, in fact, Sanders being ill becomes a political factor, certainly I hope it is not a health factor, it could benefit her because her politics and his are very similar. And it could also raise the question of age, which it should not, because I'm against ageism, particularly today. But it can raise that issue, which could be problematic for Biden and Trump. People keep forgetting Trump is 73, 74 years old. And I think that we've got to see the ramifications of what happens in reaction to this. I never forget when they blew out of proportion Hillary Clinton supposedly passing out. So you never know the politics of these things, even though we hope that it doesn't poison our concern for their health.
Hey, Jason, it's Jonathan Lemire. Certainly I agree with the Reverend. Senator Sanders' health is most important, but if he is sidelined for a while, that also could include the next presidential debate in about 2 weeks, which would be a significant thing. But setting that aside for the moment, we see Senator Warren, obviously, with this momentum. We're not seeing that much momentum from Senator Harris. You know, she's on the cover of New Time magazine, as we just teased a moment ago. Assess her campaign right now. Why is she sort of stalled? Her campaign has been touting fundraising numbers, saying that's been the focus. But at a certain point, don't you have to turn those dollars into support? What is she missing right now?
Well, it's weird because this would be, under almost any other circumstances, a fantastic week for Senator Harris. You know, she did decent in her fundraising, not fantastic. She got one of the best responses by anybody on SNL last week, and that's a real thing. When you are characterized well on Saturday Night Live, it means you're in the public consciousness. Maya Rudolph did a fantastic job. Senator Harris sort of laughed back and forth, and she gets the cover of Time magazine. But this has always been her challenge. She's basically the Marco Rubio of this race. Everybody likes her in theory. Lots of people think that she checks a lot of boxes in demographics, but the reality is a lot of Democratic primary voters are afraid. They are afraid of pushing back against what Donald Trump represents. They believe that voting for an African-American woman after Barack Obama to go against Donald Trump might be pushing the Midwestern states or conservative Democrats too far. And I think as she's had difficulty convincing people that she has a pathway to victory, it's resulted in a lot of her supporters, sort of educated white women, educated white men, moving to Elizabeth Warren, who they think is more possible. So Harris has always, in my view, from the polling numbers, maintained this middle ground. But now she's pretty much tied with Mayor Pete Buttigieg, and she can't seem to explain why she would be more effective in going against Donald Trump than Joe Biden or Elizabeth Warren.
Karine?
Yes. Hey, Adrienne, this is Karine. First, I do want to say well wishes to Senator Bernie Sanders. If he's watching, please get well soon. And we're all thinking of you clearly here today. And Adrienne, my question to you is about, I wanted to continue the conversation about the Q3 numbers. We saw Bernie Sanders numbers, which were incredibly impressive and makes sense because of that grassroots movement that he has. We saw Pete Buttigieg, who did pretty well. And we saw Harris, as Jason just mentioned. But we haven't heard from the two big frontrunners, which is Joe Biden and Elizabeth Warren. So wanted to kind of get your thoughts on that. I think Joe Biden's campaign said their numbers were not going to come out until October 15th, which seems odd to me, but wanted to throw that question to you.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. It's sort of surprising to me that we have not heard from Elizabeth Warren and Joe Biden yet. Now, you will recall that Elizabeth Warren waited a couple days until after the first round of candidates released their numbers in Q2, and she ended up blowing people out of the water. She raised a lot of money. A lot of those were in small dollar donations, which, of course, is what you want if you're running for higher office. But if Joe Biden's campaign is not releasing his numbers until October 15th, which is when they actually post online, they become available to the public, that does make me wonder what that means. I mean, does it mean that he still raised a lot of money, but a lot of those donations are from max out donors or donors who are giving over, $1,000? It probably, I mean, again, who knows, right? But I have to think that it's probably not the best news, or maybe he's not, his numbers don't compare to some of the other candidates in the race. But I also want to say something else on fundraising numbers, and I think this is an important point to look at as we're starting to assess the field going into the fall, going, 15 and a half, 16 weeks away from the Iowa caucuses. I think the fundraising numbers that candidates are raising right now are almost as important as the poll numbers, because as you see candidates like Mayor Pete raise $19 million this quarter, Bernie Sanders raised $25 million. These are the people who are going to be able to go further into the race, who are going to be able to have dynamic campaigns in Super Tuesday states, who are going to be able to have very well thought out delegate strategies in those states, because you got to remember, delegate-rich states like Texas, California, those states are on Super Tuesday. And I think you see Joe Biden's campaign has already put out a story saying that we're investing a lot of resources now in Super Tuesday states. Mayor Pete's campaign has been building an operation in some of these states for a long time. This is not just about the first early states, right? This is about having the fuel to go the whole way. And that's why I think looking at these fundraising numbers right now is very important.
Hey, Senator McCaskill, this is Sam Stein here. You famously, in 2008, saw the promise that Obama had as a candidate and took a risk, fundamentally, in endorsing him over Hillary Clinton. There's no Obama in this field. I don't think anyone is talking about that. But I'm wondering if you see some parallels in terms of the momentum that Elizabeth Warren has right now against a more establishment alternative in Joe Biden, and how she's ticked up in the polls. And I wonder if you foresee a future in which some senators like you in 2008 decide that they want to cast their lot with her even if it means angering the Biden team?
Well, there's a dynamic there that really wasn't as prevalent in 2008, and that was you had 2 United States senators. In this instance, there's a lot of United States senators running. So I think the senators have a good excuse to keep their powder dry because so many of their colleagues are still working at this, including Bernie Sanders. And let's not forget, while we all want Bernie to feel better and count me in that group, Bernie's number was amazing. 25 million is amazing for somebody who's been, let's be fair, written off by a lot of folks with the narrative in the media. So the fact that he has got that kind of grassroots support, and that's all grassroots stuff, that means he's still going to be able to organize. And to Adrienne's point, there's a reason that the Biden campaign is waiting until the 15th. This is all very strategic. It is either that that's the day of the debate, and they want it to be a big story going into the debate, or they want it to be buried by what goes on at the debate. One of the two, and we just don't know which one it is. The more interesting question is, where's Elizabeth Warren's number? She should be competing with Bernie Sanders on this grassroots stuff. Her contribution, her average contribution, should be down there like Bernie's, below $25. Did she do as well as Bernie? And that really is the fight that's going on right now. She went up 8 points in the Monmouth poll, but Biden went up 6. So this is still a real horse race between somebody who people know really well versus somebody who's perceived as a fighter that's more of an outsider. And I don't know yet how this is all going to come down. I know as long as she's considered the front runner, she's going to have a lot more incoming. There'll be a lot more negative. It's just the nature of the beast. They'll be forced on her. So we'll see how she withstands the pressure of being a front runner.
And as you say, Bernie will have the money to stay around as long as he decides he wants to stay around. Maria, you can talk broadly about the race, obviously, but I want to ask you specifically your read on how impeachment plays in to this 2020 contest. We had Max Rose, a Democrat from Staten Island, on the show a little bit earlier. He made the decision, a tough decision in a Trump district, he's a Democrat, to support the impeachment inquiry. He had this town hall last night. He said he made the big announcement. He was ready for all the incoming. And everybody rolled their eyes and wanted to talk about the traffic on the Verrazano Bridge. So I guess my question is, how is this playing with voters, this impeachment discussion, and how does it impact the campaign?
Sure. When we look at the August recess, actually, we did have hundreds of activists take to their local congressional districts and get involved in this impeachment conversation and continue it. If you look back to last summer, actually, Indivisible and our network of activists have been engaged in this conversation and trying to create some more space around this issue and expecting accountability coming out of Congress, of this White House. And so I do think that it does have the potential to bring more folks in. We're seeing the public polling going, you know, almost 10 points up in a week among voters. And so we want to continue to tap into that increase, but also realize that we think there's a potential there that when we are all united in this fight on accountability and the defense of our Constitution, that we believe it's actually going to be a winner for our base, that it's going to motivate our base, and it's going to help contribute to our historic turnout. But we also want to make sure that as we confront this, that we are still talking about all of the other issues that face families and folks who are hurting, and we want to make sure that our candidates are still talking about those issues as well.
And clearly those are the ones voters are most concerned about. Reverend Sharpton, what's your read on this? Obviously, Joe Biden is at the center of this conversation about Ukraine, about impeachment. The story is about him, really. How does it factor into this race?
I think the danger is that you get some kind of collateral damage just being part of the scandal story. And Joe Biden has clearly not done anything wrong. That was clearly off the table when the issue raised. But the fact that his name is in the middle of it is dangerous, which is why I think he came out blasting yesterday. I would hope, though, that the Democrats, and that's why I was very interested in what Maria said, because I'm still a guy on the ground. We just finished a National Action to Work Midwest conference. People on the ground are not as focused on impeachment as they are their everyday issues. Right. And I would hope the Democrats do not become so overcharged on impeachment that they forget infrastructure and criminal justice. We just had a big case in Dallas that no candidate even talked about. So we cannot miss the forest for the trees.
Jason Johnson, what's your read about impeachment in this 2020 race?
Well, a couple things. I got to mention, Rev, that Julian Castro and Beto
that's
O'Rourke,
right. That's
yeah,
right.
they did tweet about it, and they said, it's accountability, but it will not bring Botham Jean back.
The top tier candidates did not, is what I should have said.
That is true. Here's the thing. Impeachment, if you talk to just sort of your average person, impeachment is separate from the 2020 election. Impeachment is something they think that Congress is sort of handling, right? So when Congress goes through with the process, people will pay attention. They may ask their local congressperson, but they don't associate it with Joe Biden. They don't associate it with Elizabeth Warren. They don't associate it with Kamala Harris. I think if we get to a point where impeachment goes to the Senate, then perhaps it could be something that could benefit Harris, Booker, or Warren if we have a trial where they get to play a prominent role. But it shouldn't really have that much of an impact on the campaign. And I thought this for half a second. The reality is the Ukrainian scandal it's basically because Donald Trump is shook by Joe Biden. He's terrified by Joe Biden. You would think that this scandal would help Biden in the numbers, but it really hasn't affected him one way or another.
All right, Maria Rubina, Adrienne Elrod, Jason Johnson, Claire McCaskill, thank you all for being with us this morning. We appreciate it. Coming up